This is a rose hip, and I am the roaming rogue researcher on the rose hip road trip. I have a rose between my hips, lows on my lips, and I am hip to the power of plants. Each day, I chant to invoke their spirits. Can you hear it?
The rose hip road trip.
This is a rose hip, and I am the roaming rogue researcher on the
Hey everyone, this is Dr. Hilary Booker, the roaming rogue researcher, and this is the Rose Hip Road Trip. This is real live research, and this week I'm really excited to share my conversation with Jason Aviles of the Wilmington Green Box and Fly Yogi. So put on your safety goggles, kids, because Jason and his team build all of their own benches and fences at NextFab, a maker's paradise, which is also where Jason and I met to conduct this interview. Last week, I shared my interview with Dave Loram in the more rural and suburban part of Wilmington. If you hadn't had a chance yet, I recommend going and watching the video from my amazing tour of Coverdale Farm at the Institute for Earth-Based Living's YouTube channel. Today, I take you to Market Street in the heart of the city of Wilmington, Delaware, where the Wilmington Green Box employs at-risk youth to serve fresh-pressed juice. Jason and I had this visionary conversation last August, and he's been working really hard over the winter to manifest the dreams he lays out in this conversation. Right now, he's rolling out lots of surprises for the summer, so I definitely recommend checking out the Wilmington Green Box on Instagram and Facebook to get up-to-date info about getting fresh juice in the heart of Wilmington. As always, thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to check out the Rose Hip Road Trip on Facebook at the Rose Hip Road Trip and Instagram at Rose Hip Road Trip and Institute for Earth-Based Living, as well as on the Rose Hip Road Trip blog at www.instituteforearthbasedliving.com/Rose Hip Road Trip. Have a beautiful week, everyone.
Wilmington Green Box was born a little over a year ago, and it was born to create different solutions to different problems. Three main problems. The first problem was food access. There isn't a lot of access to healthy food alternatives here in this community, which is very kind of unique because it's downtown and we don't have a supermarket, we don't have a market or a produce market. And the other issue was youth employment. A lot of the at-risk youth that lived in communities surrounding downtown Wilmington found it difficult for employment. So we decided to hire youth to run the daily operations of the project. And then the last piece was supporting local food businesses and food companies. We found that a lot of local small food companies were struggling just to bring in that large, consistent residual income because they're small to the point where they wouldn't be able to manage, let's say, like a huge vendor. But at the same time, they need money coming in. So we gave a lot of different small food companies the opportunity to be able to sell to us readily and give them a flowing amount of money in. So those are the main three issues. And we started launching the project by creating this mobile push cart that we pushed around the city and housed different healthy goods, and we brought these goods into different parts of the community, and the kids were there and they helped us push this around, and we did that the whole summer.
And what was the space that you were pushing it around?
So we were we did farmers markets. We didn't have a way to transport the truck anywhere, so we literally could only go where we could push it. So we went to some areas in the east side, went to some areas of west side of the city. We did the farmers market at Rodney Square. Sometimes we would set up on Market Street, like Market and 8th Street. We went everywhere we felt like going. Like there were no boundaries. It was the first year we were doing it, so we just went wherever we felt kind of inspired to go, and in the hope that we could be able to sell everything we carried for the day.
And then what brought you to the Green Box as a sort of more permanent location?
Yeah, so we saw that there was demand. And it was huge because a large part of what we were doing was educating people. Our top seller was this watermelon juice that we had, and it was just straight pressed watermelon juice, no additives, no sugars. And people would drink this and swear that there was like sugar in there. And people would ask, like, how do you make this? Like, is it difficult? We say, no, it's fairly easy. You can make a large quantity of watermelon juice because watermelon is mainly water content. Right. Think of. But this was something like people had never been introduced to. Cold pressed juices here in central Wilmington is completely unavailable. Like, there is nowhere, I don't know of a place you can go to and get a cold pressed juice. So because it hasn't been accessible, it isn't in people's awareness, and people don't know what it is. So a large part of what we're doing was educating people, and once people got educated and started to try it, they loved it. I mean, we did the Brandywine Art Festival, I'll never forget, and we made 100 watermelon juices the whole weekend. It was 2 days. And the first day we sold all the 100, and we had to go back that same night and make another 100 for the next day. Yeah. With all that demand, we were like, you know what, we want to build something where people could come to us on a consistent basis and be able to pick up some of the stuff, that we're carrying. Right. And we just felt like that would be a lot more effective in serving people, only because, when we were doing a push cart, we would just go wherever we kind of felt like going. The only designated area we would go was on Wednesdays at the farmers market. So people had a hard time kind of getting to us. Right. So, yeah, with the outdoor space and with the semi-permanent space, it just worked really well because the outdoor space gave us kind of like a platform for events and programming, and just to have that kind of green element complement the green box and that kind of overall kind of feel and idea that it has.
Do you have a particular intention behind the sorts of events and programming that you host?
We're totally open. I mean, I guess it has to make sense in terms of our branding, but we're totally open. Art events, music events, open mic events, anything that can serve the community as a platform for positivity or expression, that's everything that we're kind of about.
And what got you personally into fresh pressed juice?
Fresh pressed juice?
When did you have your first juice?
So in 2011, I left Delaware and I went to a consciousness-based education university in Iowa called Maharishi University of Management. And the entire school was revolved around this meditation technique called transcendental meditation. And I went to this university, and that was the first time I was really opened up to the world of spirituality, the world of health, Ayurveda, wellness. Yeah. And it was there that I got introduced to cold pressed juices. Yeah. My girlfriend at that time, she actually had opened up a small juice bar. And the effects and just the power in the nutritional intake, these juices were just mind-blowing. I mean, like, straight up energy shots. And for me, it was like, more people don't know about this. Like, how is it that our communities aren't benefiting from these different tools, these techniques, these formulas, these different just amenities? So when I came back to Delaware after graduating, I made it my goal to infuse these different tools and techniques and elements and things that I was exposed that helped me benefit from them to the masses.
What led you to want to attend that particular university?
Yeah, so it was a journey. I had been working with youth professionally for like 10 years. Okay. Ranging. In Wilmington? No, all over. Okay. So I'm originally from New York City. Okay. So I started at the age of 20 as an assistant teacher in a special education high school. And that's where I started. And then from there, I left in about 2007, 2006, and I came to Delaware. And I continued working with kids in education. I did a lot of substitute teaching. I did a lot of behavior counsel work, IEP development work. Then I had lost my job, and I started working in a maximum security youth prison upstate New York. And I worked there for about 9 months before I just couldn't take anymore because of the stress, that it brought. Yeah, right. and I wasn't in a spiritually sound place to be able to process that as I'm processing my own.
And hold your own life.
Yeah, because I was taking it out. I mean, at the time, I was living with my grandmother in her basement, and I was just very bitter, very jaded, very just angry because I didn't know what to do with that stress. So after working there for about 9 months, I moved back to Delaware, and I got right back into working with the kids in the school. And one day I was sitting at my desk. I was working at an elementary school here in Wilmington. I had took a kid downstairs to get his meds, and I brought the kid upstairs after taking his meds. In about 15, 20 minutes, he was knocked out asleep, like drooling and snoring. And, that's when it hit me. There has to be another way. And the biggest idea that came out of it was I felt like I was more part of the problem than a solution. I really felt like at that time in my life that I was failing them. I wasn't really contributing to a solution-oriented method. I had been trained and educated to train and educate them a very particular way, and it just wasn't working. Suppressing their creativity, their mental fortitude by these meds because we don't know how to get to the root of their behavioral issues isn't right. We compromise by just dumbing them down. And after that experience, I left my job, and that's when I went searching for alternative education.
So what motivates you to keep doing the work that you're doing now?
I think I'm mostly motivated by my vision. My grandmother, she passed this, on to me, and this ability to see what hasn't been quite seen yet. The thing with me is, for the most part, when I have an idea of something, I'm already seeing it happen. Most people need to see something to believe it's possible. But for me, it's like, once I see it in my mind, I know that it's possible. And I'll do whatever it takes to seeing it all the way through. And without me being introduced to any of the spiritual content or anything, I had found out that I was practicing these different things. After I had a vision about something, for instance, I had a vision about a chair, I would then Google images of chairs and try to find the best image of a chair through Google that matches the image I had in my head. And then I would print it out. And then I would put it on my notebook, and I would kind of build this world around my vision. And what I didn't know I was doing is I was strengthening it, I was bringing it into the manifest. And then seeing it through became very easy because it was I had already got a really good taste of it. So I think a large part of my motivation comes from having that ability to kind of envision and see it. And then the other part is the impact and what it can do for people. With Wilmington Green Box, the most exciting thing about the project for me was seeing people's reaction to, drinking a watermelon juice. Having a whole conversation about how a carrot, as dry as it looks, can produce a liter worth of juice. Knowing that people were being introduced to something entirely new that they could integrate into their lives that could dramatically increase their health and overall quality of life. The impact is very important. I think it's extremely important for me.
So what is it that you see?
For Wilmington Green Box?
Yeah, or just in general. Your vision, or it's what you see.
Right now, what I see happening is, and I think someone asked me this question, right? You teach yoga, right? You have this yoga company, and that's what you do. So what does Wilmington Green Box have to do with that?
Right.
What does Artist Ave have to do with that? What does placement have to do with that? It seems like you're all over the place because you got all these different things going on, right? And for me, it was it's all yoga. The way that I was taught that yoga is a lifestyle. I was taught that yoga is a systematic approach to living a greater quality of life. You have these 8 limbs to cover these 8 different areas that are all pointing you in the same direction, but all target different areas. So there's this complete holistic transformation. You're tackling the mind while tackling the body. You're tackling the emotions while tackling the brain. You're attacking the prana in the breath, while attacking the organs. When I look at my world of business, I look at it like that. They're not separate. Artist Ave isn't separate from Wilmington Green Box. Wilmington Green Box isn't separate from yoga. Yoga asanas is just as important as a healthy diet. They need to work in complement with each other in order to have that whole growth. Freedom of expression, platform for creative expression is just as important as diet as it is in physical culture. So I'm trying to create like a society within society, outlets and platforms that help target these different areas that I have found to be extremely important in terms of developing and sustaining a high quality of life. And I think what I see is all of these pieces of the puzzles that appear to be separate coming together. This could take form in like a compound, huge warehouse spaces where there's housing, while there's, agriculture and urban farming on site, while there's a juice smoothie bar cafe, while there's artists workspace areas and stage performance and a gym or a fitness space or center. I kind of see like this ecosystem to help kind of push the individual by supporting them with all these different things towards that goal of being the best version of themselves.
How would you define the relationship between a general definition of earth-based and how that relates to what you do and who you are?
For me, it's changed over the years because my relationship with nature, has changed. When I had a mindset that was very complex in its nature, I couldn't see the beauty and simplicity. It's almost as if I thought like I had to overachieve, I had to overdo, I had to overwork in order for there to be something that directly is correlated with value. I think over the years I've understood through observing nature that it's truly in simplicity. The beauty is truly in being as simple as possible. It is our own mind that it makes it become all of these fragment things because it's a direct reflection of our fragmented, mind, our fragmented construct. So when I think of Earth, I think being as close as possible to nature in the simplicity of our lifestyle and of our action. And for me, it's like now I realize that I don't need as much as I thought I needed to thrive. A lot of the things that I wanted weren't things that I particularly wanted. They were things that were kind of projected on me to want. So I had to go through this process of eliminating that. And I think that's what mainstream society thinks. Mainstream society, I think now words like go green and sustainability and earth, and they've become slogans of the media to drive profit. But in its core, it really doesn't have the connection to nature, itself. And even for me in Wilmington Green Box, there's so much room for improvement in that sense. And it's kind of challenged me not only to be creative, but to also just kind of learn these systems that exist to make things happen a lot more naturally and a lot more efficient, a lot more effectively, especially when you look at like growing your own food. That's one of the top priorities I think we're going to set for ourselves next year is like we should be growing our own stuff. We should be selling what we're growing, and that process in itself could bring so much more as far as programming and youth employment and education and things like that. I think even for me in my own life, there's a goal to be as close and almost to like mimic nature to my best ability. Not to, I think when people think of nature, they think of it almost as if like, how can I use it? How can I deplete it? How can I take from it? But we have to feed into it equally as much as we expect to receive from it. Otherwise, it can't be sustained. And when you look at the earth and how much and how long it has been able to sustain itself with the amount of taking that we've done to it, it's astonishing because it's always giving. It's always giving. And it's like, that's an ideal for me just to be able to aspire to be. To be that like overflowing abundant source, where I can give in a very sustainable, effective way while not being depleted. And just like nature, there has to be things that I'm feeding myself.
And it's also cyclical, right? So it takes moments of rest so that it can
And all of that is nature.
Right.
And
all we have those cycles too.
Yes. Yeah. And it's crazy because that's what it. When you look at it, it's like the answer's already there. For me, it was a process of getting myself out of the mindset that I was fed first, so I then could be open to anything else other than that. Because it was like, even now, I've been plant based now for about 5 years. You know, and I remember when I first started out, the biggest question was like, how am I getting my protein? How am I getting my protein? How am I getting my protein? You know, protein is very important. Protein, you know. Got milk, you know, these huge kind of ads, you know, like drink milk. And for a while, I was just regurgitating without even knowing what protein was, why I should be drinking milk. I just did it because that's what everyone else is doing, and this is what they're telling me to do. And I trust that as, like, a good source of, like, information because, like, they're the media. Like, they should have our best interests at heart. Then I get older and I finally have the ability to critically think for myself and go into these things. And I'm like, I think nature, it challenges minds in ways that are very unique because it puts you in a position where you have to not only look at nature itself, but look at yourself. And that's when we know we're doing something wrong. It's when we tune in and we're like, I just don't feel right. I feel sick. I feel depleted. I feel like I need rest. And I can keep following this prescribed kind of template of how I should live my life. Or I can look at what's already here, what's already being provided abundantly.
Right. And that you already are.
Yes. And you directly come from it.
Right.
You know, you're directly by. That's even with the yoga, like the poses and postures. I remember my instructor telling me that a lot of the content from the Veds, you know, were cognized, you know, by these saints and gurus. These were people who were intuitively in tune with nature, and they took nature and they translated it into the Veds. You know, and the physical poses and postures were designed to mimic nature. The breathing patterns and the diet, all these things were in place to mimic nature because they directly came from nature through these gurus, you know, who were able to kind of act as vessels.
Right.
So truly everything that is the most natural comes from what's already here, which is, like you're saying, which is what we come from in ourselves. So why not listen to that?
Besides growing your own food, are there any other specific practices that you would like to do that you're not doing now? Or when you talk about improvement, whether it's improvement for the Green Box or improvement for yourself, what would you like to be doing that you're not doing now?
Yeah, Green Box, definitely growing our food and making our own products. That's something that we definitely want to start getting into, like, as soon as possible. Cold pressing our own juices, making our own fruit salads, smoothies, fresh salads, and
so are you pressing your own juices now?
So we go through through juice libations. We go through, you know, small vendors, small companies, but we also want to have our own product line, and I think it's important for sustainability. And as well, like, the outdoor location, we may be there, weather permitting, up until, like, October 1st. So after that, you know, we'll kind of be, like, out of season with that outdoor location. But if we were making products, that's room for employment for kids on the weekends, after school. They can be, like, prepping and preparing and putting together these juices and things like this. So it opens up more opportunities for employment for the youth as well. But then it gives us a whole nother avenue of revenue, you know. So now these different places could carry out juices. The coffee shops and all, they can carry out juices. We could have a delivery. We've thought about having, like, an actual Wilmington Green Box, you know, where we're delivering the selection of, like, goods and produce to different people. Anywhere. Yeah, things like that. So yeah, having our own product line is important. I would say the last thing is having a permanent space. You know, having an indoor juice smoothie bar, cafe in combination with, like, a Trader Joe's type produce feel, something like that. Something very, very homey, very warm, very inviting for the community, and to kind of be like that hub, you know, that source to kind of get these different things under one roof.
Is there anything about either your personal practices or your work and the Wilmington Green Box and juice libations that you think people misunderstand?
This is something I've struggled with. Jay-Z, he has this line, right? And he says, you know, success is like suicide, right? And he goes into, and he's like, you know, see Jesus, see Judas, see Malcolm. Once you obtain a certain level of success, whether it's actual success or whether it's success through the perception of success,
Right.
I think people may feel like, oh, they're entitled to that. Oh, they're entitled to that opportunity. Like, oh, they partner with BPG or they got these people on here, so they're entitled to getting spaces. They're entitled to getting that. They're entitled to funds. They're entitled to this. Like, they have success. They've done it for 2 years. They've been in 5 different newspaper articles. Like, they're no longer grassroots. They're no longer, like, on the bottom where we are. They're no longer struggling. And that's the farthest thing away from the truth.
Right.
You know, like,
You gotta get up every single day and do that same thing over again.
listen, I'm gonna tell you right now.
It's like yoga. It
I'm
is yoga.
Yes,
It's just
it's a
different
practice.
form.
Yeah.
It's a different form.
Yoga takes many forms.
Yeah.
Many forms. Not just the asanas on the
Right.
mat. You know, yoga is
The real
relationship.
yoga is off the mat.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They would say 80% off the mat, 20% on the mat.
Yep.
The real yoga is relationships.
Yeah.
The real yoga is conflict resolution.
Yeah.
You know, negotiating. And I think perception has that way with people where people assume what they don't really know. And we're being forced right now to work harder than we've ever been forced to work. Even when we first started. For this Wilmington Green Box site, we put 100% of our own money up. We didn't receive a grant. We didn't receive a donation. We didn't receive a volunteer. We had to build it here, you know, at Next Fab. Thank God for Next Fab. And there's a gentleman here named Chad Rapeel, and he runs their wood shop, and he helped guide us through the project and help us build it. But people don't see that as much as they see the headlines, and they see the newspaper articles, and they see, you know, the smiles and the photo ops, and with the mayor and with this. They don't see that not one of us, myself, James Thompson, or John Nawn, has been paid from Wilmington Green Box. And this is 2 years, you know, after hard work and dedication. You know, and I'm up there as much as possible, Monday through Friday, 11 to 4, while still running a yoga company. So there has been a large bit of sacrifice, and there still is to this very day. And I don't know if people understand that. I almost believe that people feel as if the opportunities are just being thrown at us, and the money is just flowing in our pockets, and you know, we're getting things what we want because we've experienced some results and we're on Market Street, and it's almost like this too. We've gotten pushed back. You know, they're like, oh, why are you on Market Street? You know, why aren't you in the hood? And it's a real question to ask. Like, why are we not in the hood? You know, and when we built this, we had to think of like the sustainability of the program, you know, and this is when like the hats have to go on and off. In terms of business, of course, you have to do business with integrity. You have to do business with a level of consciousness, a level of awareness, but you also have to do business in a way where the business can be sustained. And what we've learned is that,
And you need resources, right? So if you're going to make something accessible in an area where there's not a lot of resources, those resources have to come from somewhere, right? So it's like
exactly,
it's got to come from somewhere in order to feed it into the next thing.
But that's the way we looked at it.
Yes.
We were like, hey, listen,
Yep.
if we put this right dead smack in the middle of Market Street, and we experienced success, and people came out, and we got opportunities coming out of that, that would give us the disposable income to do things without not having those things being met. And that's an art form, because I feel like once you really get introduced to your passion and your creativity at first, all you want to do is be passionate and create. And for a while, you know, that lasts. But then you think about that within the context of how am I also going to provide for my own livelihood? How is all of this going to make sense? How is this all going to be sustainable? So simultaneously, the artist or creative now has to understand business, because in order for me to sell that piece has to be tied to an existing business structure, and that business structure has to have certain licenses, and in order for that piece to be
Especially when you're doing
held, yes. Oh, well,
Boss.
please, God,
Food is so
I can't
tough.
even tell you I can't even tell you how crazy it's been when it comes to just wanting to sell whole apples, oranges, and
No, you can't just do that.
I can't even tell you. People don't even know.
Yeah.
Hours on the phone with the FDA, public health on speed dial. You know, asking every question because it's so tedious, it's so small, but at the blink of an eye, they can snatch your business right up under you. You know, at any time,
They
someone
do all
can
the
make a
time.
complaint. Oh no, they do, and that's the balance. It's like, and this was something that I struggle with because in yoga, in the Bhagavad Gita, they explain two roles that the yogi can choose. One role is the role of the householder, and one role is the brahmacharian role, the role of the recluse. And what I've learned is that it's very hard for those two to coexist without being in conflict with each other. And what I went through for a while was like, okay, you know, I'm out here and I know none of this exists because it's all pure consciousness. This is what physics is telling me. I know this body isn't a body. I know it isn't, but I'm still hungry. I still need to eat. I still need a roof over my head. So that's a reality, as well as this is a reality. So how do I exist within all of these levels of reality and still find happiness within myself? Because if all I'm tied to is this isn't real, but the whole world is telling me it's real and the environment is built and supported upon this is real, it's either A, I'm going to create a completely different environment to sustain that thought process, or I'm going to have to find a balance while living in this world and respects the laws. And that's the thing. There's levels to consciousness.
Yes.
There's levels to awareness. There's levels to reality. And a lot of people who are newly introduced to the spiritual world of thinking, there's a lot of conflict that happens while navigating through these realities, through these laws, if you don't have a truly integrated understanding of it all. And yoga means union, you know, and union is the goal of full integration. And when it's not integrated, you just have the fragmented thought of, okay, this is reality, but this isn't. You have to understand that it's all reality, but that reality exists in layers. So equally, I have to respect the reality that if I like hit my head up against a wall, I'm gonna get like a bruise and I may have like a concussion. And at the same time, I have to know that this wall isn't real. You know, how do I allow these two completely different ideas to exist within my brain without them causing conflict and making me go crazy? How do I be sustainable and want peace and want time and solitude, but then I have to work a job and make money to take care of my responsibilities? That becomes the hardest task for the person who's newly coming into this spiritual world. How do I make sense of it all? And for me, I'm still trying to figure out what my lifestyle needs to look like for it to be all encompassing.
It's a lifelong journey.
Yes. Yes.
Kind of is the lifelong journey.
Yes. Absolutely. I think I truly do believe that what we're doing right now with Wilmington Green Box and what I'm doing with Fly Yogi and what's happening with all these different things, I truly feel like they're going to all be pieces of a puzzle that creates like a society within a society, a place that can sustain us with the least amount of taxation. You know, when people have the space and time to go inward while not feeling the burden of having their responsibilities being met, which is what I experienced when I was in Iowa for 3 years, transformation accelerates. And that's needed. When I was out there in Iowa, like, I knew that time was my biggest asset. Like, I knew, like, I had to have time for me. There was no way. Like, even now, it's very difficult for me to wrap my head around having to be tied down to one place, one chair, one desk for 8 hours without being able to move. Some people can, and they're okay with that. But for me, it's too restricting. It's too restricting. I need that flexibility and freedom. I have to be able to feel like I own my time. I have to feel like I own my life. I have to feel like that. And my lifestyle has to speak to that. Trying to have that lifestyle and making money, and that's what I'm learning now. Like, how can we do it? How can we really pull this off? How can everyone eat, everyone be taken care of, but we can do projects and build programming that's truly with the people at mind. Like, how can we do this? How is this possible? And I'm learning it now, you know, through grants and like private funding and There's some people around the world who are doing it, who have models that have been executed, and entire communities have been built. So I feel like it may get that big. I feel like it may grow into that.
Is there anything that I haven't asked that you would like me to ask, or is there anything that you haven't said that you would like to say, or do you have any questions for me?
I'll say this. I think some people, they'll look at everything that's happening and they'll ask me, how do you balance it all out? And the most important thing that I'm realizing is that I am not doing it. It's not so much me that's doing it. I get these ideas, I get these visions. I don't know from where, sometimes I don't know why. I just get them and they haunt me. And I know if something is for me, I know, because I'll give it time, I'll give it attention. I'll create a world around it. And it's no longer about me doing it. It's a collaboration. It's collaboration of things that can be seen, like actual partners and team members, and things that can't be seen. There's energy and there's forces and there are vibrations that are carrying these thoughts into manifestation, that are carrying our language and the way we walk and the way we talk. And that's happening all the time in the background. And at the same time, in the physical, none of this is being done by myself. And I haven't seen the amount of results that I've seen in the last couple of years of my life because I didn't know how to work as a team. I think being raised in the Bronx, I think I was trained to just do everything. It's like that's your survival. If you can do everything, you can survive. Like you never have to rely and depend on nobody. You can take care of yourself. Like you don't need anybody.
Right.
But then you also feel the taxation of it.
Right.
You're like, can life just be a little bit easier? Then you have to learn how to be in relationship with others. And that took me to embrace this idea that, I have a set of strengths that can very well work with other people's set of strengths. And all of those coming together could help accelerate these ideas into the manifest far more than I can do on my own. So it's never me just doing anything.
Yeah.
It's a team of us physically. There's also overall consciousness or awareness or vibration of the time that we're in that's giving us support that's real. I think we're at a time right now where the vibrations are high, things are more receptive, and there's a responsibility that comes with that too. And there has to be a certain level of readiness too, because it can work against you just as much as it can work to your benefit. If you don't have everything within alignment, then that energy, everything that's going to be overpowering, overwhelming, and that's when we have to be grounded, in our spiritual practice. And when I say spiritual practice, I'm not necessarily talking about yoga. It can be anything. It can be carpentry, it can be anything, whatever it is for you. It can be art, it can be that, whatever it is. Everything happens as a collective. And my life has gotten so much easier. And I hope for it to get even more easier. The more people that we can just bring on. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
For me, just being like, this is my thing. This is what I want to do. This is your thing. This is your thing. And then we're like, okay, we need this, this, and this. Now we got to find somebody here, find somebody here, find somebody here. And then collectively we share the same intent for the overall kind of mission and vision. And everything works. That's how everything has been happening thus far.
How would you like to see this research used, or how do you think that it can be most beneficial to the most amount of people?
As much as possible. I think these conversations and these narratives are very important because oftentimes we look at the experts for information or advice or for stories, but no one really captures the process, the journey. So because we don't know that part, and all we know is that you have a multi-million-dollar company, and in the process is where all the gems lie. And it's very difficult for me to have a relationship with someone who is already there, and yet I have no relationship with the process. Because then it's like I'm taking all the information that's already reached its output. So now it's like I read the books, and it's like it's speaking about enlightenment. And it's speaking about how compassionate I need to be and how natural I need to be and how this, but it doesn't give me the methods, the tools, the techniques on how to get there So now it becomes even more confusing because now it's very passive, it's very forced. So I'm going to act peaceful. But inside, there's a war going on. And because I don't know how to process that war, I'm just going to continue to act peaceful. Because all it takes is the right trigger. And they go
nuclear bomb.
Boom. So what yoga did for me was it gave me the context and the content, right? It speaks about all these things. It speaks about enlightenment. It speaks about relationships. And then what it told me was, here are your practices. Yeah. Here is your daily routine. If you meditate 20 minutes each time, twice a day, if you do your physical practice, if you do your pranayams, if you eat this diet, if you do all this, you'll experience it for yourself. You'll feel the peace yourself. You'll have a greater sense of the space for yourself. Now the book no longer needs to guide me, because ultimately, and this is something I hated when I was doing motivational speaking. So many people benefit from this. I hated the fact that people depended upon me. I wasn't really helping people. It was like I was giving them good things and I was exciting them and they were getting all wild up and they were motivated, but it was temporary. It was like a quick high. And as soon as their high died down, they came right back to me. Yo, I need that quick pick me up. I'm going to pay for another session. Yeah. I'm going to do this. All your new books coming out. Oh, shoot, I got to get that one. The last book you gave me, the 4 Keys to Success. Now you're telling me there's a 5th one that I had no idea about. And next year I'm going to come out with the 6th one from that's been revealed through ancient times or whatever. But you just keep chasing it. But you're never really getting closer to yourself.
You're looking for it outside of you rather
than
inside of you.
And you're not integrating. And the real teacher points all information towards the self. I'm not pointing information outward so I make you reliable on it. There's no real growth and development in that. That's why for me, when it came to yoga, it was I'm going to teach you the meditation. I'm going to teach you the breathing. I'm going to teach you the physical practice. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to hold you accountable. Because
and that's the hard part.
Yes.
Getting up every day and doing it every day is the hard
part.
part.
No, it really is. It really no. I know this for myself.
Right.
But at least you know that you have the tools. They're on your belt. And anytime you can pull one off, I may not do my meditation every day, but I know if I'm at that place, I pull that tool out, engage in my practice. I know that I have these things on my belt. So I gave you the tool. You don't need to keep coming back to me for the information. Now, there may be growth in the information or perhaps growth in the tool and advancements in the tool, but I felt like I was...
But the transformation is in the practice, not in the information,
yes,
right? Not
yes,
the knowledge.
it's in the practice of integration. You absolutely have to. And when that happens, when you engage your senses, when you engage yourself, it becomes yours. No one can take that from you. Now it's yours. You own it. It's with you forever, no matter what this person does, or if they decide to go out of business or whatever it is or whatever, you have that resource of knowledge, within you. And that's why, know thyself is such a big quote. Even though it's so simple, it's so vast because it's knowing yourself is the beginning and end of everything. Everything is you when you really understand that. No one has to force you to be compassionate. Because naturally, you're going to be you're made up of the same stuff I'm made up of. You have dreams that live within you, just like I have dreams that live in with me. I can't do on to others that I wouldn't want do on to me. I can't do that. I'm a direct reflection of you. What I see in my life is a direct byproduct of what I'm projecting onto others, how I'm treating others. But it's easy for me to say that and tell people to be peaceful and be this. But if I'm not giving them the tools... Right. They aren't integrating it. So it just stays right here on the surface. Even it makes sense. You got to feel it. Yeah. You got to own it. You have to know that it's true. And this is why, food is very healing. Not just for the physiology, but for the mind, for the heart, for prana. Because the food that we're eating, it contains life. It contains energy, vibration. When we consume these foods, we're feeding into that vibration. That vibration slowly starts to work within us. One of the first things that happen, I'm on a fast right now. Today is day 20. I'm doing a juice fast. when the first things that start to happen is mental clarity.
Yeah.
That mental fog starts to be eliminated. I would even experience witnessing where I would be like watching myself talk. You know, as I'm talking, I'm like watching myself talk.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, wow, just through changing the foods that I'm, yo, listen, I'm 20 days in right now. Juice, fast, very clairvoyant, very sensitive.
That's the thing.
Very sensitive.
So sensitive.
Yes, very, very sensitive. But again, like, these are things that we could do as practices that could change the way we feel. And once we do that, naturally, we're just going to treat each other from that place.
Right.
Most people haven't felt like good about themselves. People are just consumed by their trauma, consumed by their issues or their problems or the obstacles and hardships that they experience, and they're so consumed by it that they can't see it. They can't see themselves. It's all covered. And that's the thing. It's like, I used to think that it was about becoming something. Like, oh, I need to become this, as if like I had to change who I was. You know, and
it's not a process of building, it's a process of removing.
Yes, it's already there.
Right.
Once you engage in these practices, you just start chipping away the gunk. Now it's like, oh shoot, I am the source of all knowledge. I am the home of all knowledge. I am the home. I am the center of the universe. Now these things have so much power in them because you know it for yourself. And no book, nothing can do that. So I hope that this engages people in a way where they start the integrating process. I love food for that reason. Food is one of the, whether you're spiritual or not, whether you want to practice yoga or do meditation or do breathing, food is the easiest way where we can meet people where they are. If we can change the food and change the water in itself, things will just start being rewired. Then it makes it a lot easier for me to have that conversation at the table. This is something that I found that foods that are not so good for me has done to me. You know, I said like you are what you eat. Taking the human body, for example, if I know on a mental level that my body needs the most natural forming foods in order for it to be optimal, the first thing that's going to happen when I introduce foods that are wrong is I'm going to experience some sense of discomfort, some sense of detox. That's my body telling me, oh no, that's not good for you. But what dangerously happens is the toxins, the impurities. If you continue to consume them, they find a home within you. And that home that they build within you now has a demand that needs to be met. Now your mind, because it's directly connected to the body, now your mind thinks that it needs what the impurities in fact need, not what you need. So it becomes very tricky, because one of the first things that happens when people fast are, I feel like shit. I don't want to feel like shit. So I stop fasting and I start eating whatever I was eating before and I feel better. And you're like, that fast don't work. That shit ain't make me feel good. Because there's no context provided for real. You're just going to do how you feel. But even how you feel is tricky, because is it you feeling that, or is it the toxin? Is it the impurities? Is it the parasites? Is it those things that are causing you to feel this way? How do you tell the difference between that? For me, I couldn't until I started to remove some of that, and then I could think for myself. So these impurities, these toxins, these are the things that get in the way of us having that true relationship and understanding of ourselves. Instead, we just kind of like mimic and project what the impurities, what the toxins, what the opposing unnatural forces that we've allowed ourselves to consume. And that happens not only internally in the body, but that happens in the world. Look at all the ideas and blueprints of life that we just, ignorantly just embrace and live our whole lives on. And this is the thing. It gives us a certain feeling of gratitude. Just like when I eat the foods that are wrong for me, it makes me feel good. Sugar, like it does something to my brain chemically. It makes me feel happy. right? It makes me feel energetic, right? So it's the same thing out here. I'm engaged in constant power struggles with people. I'm in the corporate room, power suit, power tie. I'm running shit. I'm making money. And I'm like, yeah, I feel good. I feel dominant.
Adrenaline.
Yeah, I'm just going. I have all this money. I got this boat. I got this. I got that. And then when you finally sit with yourself, when you actually stop running, give that stuff a fast. Like you give it a fast. It can be a day, 2-day fast. Yeah. You start to really feel like, damn, like I'm not really that happy. Like I didn't rode this boat how many times. I didn't have this many women, this many men. I didn't brought every bag I could. I didn't move into the biggest house on the block. I didn't got the biggest lawnmower. I didn't did it all. But like I'm not happy. And that's the same thing with the body, right? The body will produce dis-ease. You know, it'll start to produce that, and that'll cause you to have to look at things differently, because then you'll be like, damn, my body isn't happy, like obviously, because just look what's happening to it, so I gotta do something about it. And most people, that's when it hits them, when they reach that point where they're suffering. And I think in Buddhism, suffering is mentioned a lot, you know, and I think it's mentioned a lot because in Buddhism, suffering is like an indicator. You know, and it isn't promoted, it isn't saying that you should suffer, people should suffer. What it's saying is that for most people, suffering is the indicator that forces them to start thinking outside of what they're doing, because now I'm faced with the reality. Right? Yes, I'm faced with the reality that something's wrong. I can't hide from this anymore. Right. I can't hide from that. Like, I know something's wrong. And most people's quest starts there, where it's like, if I know this is wrong, then what's right? And then, you know, you go out there and you start trying to find answers. So I feel like these are the things that just get in our way. And if we had support systems in place, it would be a lot easier for these processes to be facilitated on every level. On agriculture, we look at what we buy from supermarkets. I look at the supermarkets, right? And I'm like, how much percentage of the supermarkets is actual food? I'm guessing maybe 5 to 10%. But then when I started studying co-op models and how this works. And there was this family, I don't know if they were in Florida or Costa Rica, but it was a family. It was a guy, his wife, and I think they had 3 or 4 children. And they had other families just like them who were struggling to provide means for their family, food-wise. So what they did was they found an organic wholesaler. And organic wholesaler was like, well, you have to buy X amount of produce. What if we get 5 families to come together? So what they started doing, they started placing these weekly orders, and they used their house as like a pickup location. So they spent, it was like a monthly fee you pay, like $100 a month. And every Wednesday, you picked up large quantities of organic, fresh produce at below conventional wholesale prices. So like when you look at it, it's like, oh, it's not even a money issue, right? We just have to like rewire and learn new ways in which
and critical thinking again,
yes,
right?
New ways in which we can have these support systems. Right. So agriculturally, like there needs to be something like that, especially for deprived communities. Mm-hmm. I know this for a fact. You got people spending $100 plus every time they go to ShopRite, buying, you know, nothing.
Nothing. I say nothing.
Yeah, buying nothing, like Cheerios and cakes and all. You can spend a fraction of that and get so much more if that was in place in that community. If people knew like all I had to do was spend $10 a week and I had a guaranteed amount of produce to last my family for a month, and this is right here in my community, then I could use that as a resource. Now, that's just agriculture-wise. Now we're thinking about, like, what are different ways that we could provide medical opportunities of support? And there's tons of them that we don't know. Even, like, Eastern and holistic doctors, psychologists, different things like this in place. When we look at these communities, these are the last things that we look to bring to the area. The last things. But we expect for them to change radically.
Because they're the most lasting effects.
Yes. Yeah, so you see these in environments where there's a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's nearby. You'll see acupuncture, you'll see Eastern holistic medicine, you'll see yoga studios, massage therapists, yoga studios, Ayurvedic practitioners, juice bars, smoothie bars, Reiki, health food stores, produce shops, healthy restaurants with vegan options. Yeah. You'll see all this in there, and it's just to keep that particular area thriving. So if we have these different areas of support system, even housing, you know, same thing. which
Well, and housing that's not toxic. Housing
Yes.
that doesn't have all kinds
lead and all
of
that.
heavy metals.
Yes. So these are the type of support systems that we need in place. And for me, I'm looking at it from food, creative expression, platforms that invite and give that opportunity to creatives, artists, just individuals at large, housing, and then I also see some type of spiritual space or some type of space that can be responsible for introducing people to these different tools and techniques.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's Tai Chi or Kung Fu or yoga or meditation or my personal opinion, I'm like, yoga worked for me, but it may not work for you. It may not work for this person. Something else may work for them. But when I was in Iowa, when I went to that school for 3 years, I noticed that what kept everyone together in that community was that meditation practice. They had 2 large domes. They had a women's dome and a men's dome, and the entire community would meditate twice a day for at least 20 minutes. Businesses shut down during the times of meditation, and you would see people walking down from like their little business kind of like downtown to these domes to take time out to meditate. And it was that spiritual practice, it was that routine, that regimen. I think we need that. I think we need that type of support in place.
Right. Awesome. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is a rose hip, and I am the roaming rogue researcher on the rose hip road trip. I have goddesses in my hips. I go to herbs to get my tips, and my food even makes fairies do flips.
The rose hip road trip.
This is a rose hip, and I am the roaming rogue researcher on the rose hip road trip. I let the wind determine my clip. I stay away from air with too much nip, and if you need some vitamin C, take a sip from my tea.
The rose hip road trip. The rose hip